everyone, it's Missy, and today I'm going to be canning plum jam using my jam and jelly maker. And the first thing I'm going to do is I am slicing around the core of the plum to get the big seed out. So I'm just taking and making a spiral cut with my knife. I twist the plum, and then you can see there's the seed. You can either pull this out with your finger. I had to use a melon baller on some of them because they're a little tricky to get out. But once you pop them out, I just put them in a cup and I'll throw them in my compost pile later. After that, I take both halves of the plums and I'm going to set them down on the cutting board. And I just take my knife and I just cut them into small chunks. And this is going to help me when I have to mash them to make the jam. So I cut them in about 4 pieces one way and maybe 3 or 4 pieces the other way, depending on how big the plums are. And after I have finished cutting them, I put them over in a 13 by 9 inch baking dish. And you're going to want to do this with all of your plums until you get one entire layer on the bottom of the baking dish so you can mash them. I'm just going to finish this plum up here so I can show you what I mean. So I got my little chunks, one last slice, and now I'm going to put them over into my baking dish over on the side. So if I move my camera, there they are. And I could tell that these plums weren't as ripe as I had wanted them to be. They're a little hard to mash, but it takes a lot of elbow grease. But what you do is you just mash them just like you would with mashed potatoes. Just keep working the masher in and around. And like I said, if the whole pan was covered with a layer, it would have been easier. And you want to have a total of 2 2/3 cups mashed plums. And then to do the jam, I'm using Ball Classic Pectin. Make sure it's the red labeled jar, not the purple one for freezer jam. You want to make sure it's pectin you can cook with. And I'm taking 3 tablespoons of that and I'm sprinkling it evenly as I can on the bottom of the jam jelly maker. Once I get all that in there, I am going to add my crushed plums. And then I didn't show this, but I had added a half a teaspoon of butter with the plums. And that's going to prevent any foaming or anything like that when it cooks. And the system, I'm going to click jam, and it defaults to 21 minutes, so I'm going to click enter. And that's going to start the cooking process. I am not going to put the lid on at this time. Meanwhile, I have my auto canner. I have 4 jelly jars in there, and I'm going to shut and lock the lid. Now I'm going to select preheat and start. And that's going to preheat the jars and ready for canning. It takes 12 minutes and they can spend an hour in there before I have to preheat them again. My jam's cooking away and I had the 4-minute warning, so now I'm ready to add my 3 1/3 cups sugar. And you want to try to sprinkle that again as evenly as possible across the bottom of the jam jelly maker. And now you're ready to put the cover on. And I'm just lining up the slots so that way the steam will vent away from my cupboards. And then I'll let that cook for another 17 minutes. So in the last minute of cooking, you can tell it's really bubbling, boiling away in there. And I'm just waiting for my final minute warning. There it is. And I'm just going to cancel. CO just means cooling off, which is just fine. So now we can remove the cover. And as you can see, there's no foam or anything. It's perfect jam. And now we're just going to move the paddle. I'm just taking a hot pad and just slipping it out, trying to shake the jam off. Just make sure you don't get it in that center hole in the jam jelly maker. And now we'll be ready to can. So I grabbed a jar out of my auto canner. And I am going to put a funnel on so that way I won't make as much of a mess. And remember not to use any metal spoons or anything in your jam jelly maker because that can scratch the Teflon finish. So I'm just using a plastic soup ladle. I find that that works best. And you want to fill your jars up to a 1/4 inch headspace. So that's 1 scoopful. And another, so it's like about 2 scoopsfuls for me, and then I have to top it off by removing the funnel. And it also helps to have all your canning supplies set up ahead of time so that way you can grab the stuff that you need. I also had my lids preheating in a pot on the stove, and that's what you see steaming in the background there. So I'm measuring my 1/4 inch headspace. And then I like to use a wooden skewer and go around the edges just to remove any bubbles that may be there. And then you want to make sure that you either have a damp cloth or paper towel so you can wipe the edges of the jar off before you put on your lid. A clean rim will allow the lid to adhere to it a lot better, thus creating a good seal. So I'm just taking the lid and putting it on top, and then I'm going to add the rim. And you want to screw on the rim so it's fingertip tight. And then I'll put that in the canner and fill up the rest of the jars. And once the canner is full, you want to shut the lid and lock it. And then we're going to select jams and jellies, and we're going to select recipe number 1. And then remember to click start, and it will process for you. And this is my plum jam when I finished. I only got 3 jars out of that batch. But if you have any questions, please leave me a comment below. I'll also leave the recipe links below if you're interested. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.